Welcome to Innovation in Government, presented by Carasoft. This program's from the Open Source Intelligence Tech Expo, presented by the OSINT Foundation. I'm your host, Francis Rose. The open source intelligence community includes more members and more data and information than ever, according to intelligence community leaders. Over the next hour, you'll meet leaders from the U.S. Army, former government leaders from the Department of Homeland Security and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and industry leaders that are supporting the federal government's OSINT community. First, an overview of using OSINT in the military and intelligence communities. Barbara Alexander's president of the OSINT Foundation and former director of the Collection and Requirements Division in the Office of Intelligence and Analysis at DHS. Elliot Jardines is director of operations for the OSINT Foundation, former assistant deputy director of national intelligence for open source. Welcome to both of you. Barbara, start with you. Why is doing an event like this important, and what's the genesis in the 3 years that the OSINT Foundation has existed to get to where you are today?
It's been quite a ride for 3 years, going from nothing to an event of this size today. The genesis of the foundation was that Elliot and I, in our career in the intelligence community, saw open source intelligence, OSINT, discounted and misunderstood. And during COVID, we just got tired of people making mistakes about it, anywhere from pronouncing the name or saying, well, anybody can do it, it's just Google. Mm-hmm. It's been around a long time, and we date the start of open source intelligence from 1941. And you hear today, oh, it's new, it's big, it's social media. So we felt that it was very important to professionalize the discipline, give the practitioners of the discipline a forum for support, for professional development and growth, for networking opportunities, and to have a career path that when I was an analyst in the intelligence community, open source professionals didn't really have. So the outcome of an event like this is to bring the community together. And these really are people who practice open source or people who support the practice of open source with tools and techniques. What I heard today from everybody was, wow, this was great. We got to talk to people. We got to network with people and look at what's happening in that organization that's germane to my organization and making the contacts. So I think we achieved that outcome. We doubled in size from last year's event, and we look forward to a bigger and better one next year.
Elliot, how much of dealing with the discounting and misunderstanding that Barb talked about a moment ago is this community still dealing with, and how much of it now is beyond that and thinking about how do we implement the technologies that are available to us and maintain the momentum that we've gained?
So we still have an issue with a misunderstanding of the complexities of the discipline. And so when I got started in open source in the early 1990s, it was a relatively easy discipline because the internet was so small, but the complexity has grown that, all of the speakers today pretty much mentioned artificial intelligence, AI, generative AI, data science, machine learning. And so the OSINT practitioner today has to have far broader skills than when I started out, when it was an additional duty, right? And so, Barb mentioned during the pandemic, the organizations weren't doing in-person events, so lots of webinars and that kind of thing. And we got tired of tuning into webinars that were comprised of people who had actually never done the job, or from senior leaders who really had no understanding of the discipline. So the good news is at the mid and lower level in the intelligence community, people have a very good appreciation. The problem frequently is at the highest levels, where those senior leaders didn't grow up with the technology, and aren't as informed as they should be about the discipline. And so we're trying to, with our other event, which is an awards reception, we invite all of those seniors to hear those testimonies, and so that they understand that they own an incredible capability.
Barb, Elliott mentioned generative AI, and I talked to a lot of folks today that are also talking about kind of the next gen of that, which is agentic AI. How do you see the evolution of this practice, of this profession, moving forward when technology changes big boulders in technology change every 12 to 24 months?
Well, we have some amazing corporate sponsors of the foundation, and there were 41 exhibitors today with those cutting edge tools. Coming from the government, we always depended upon them because they have the cutting edge technologies. They can move and bring it in. The government speakers who talked today were using a lot of those platforms and tools and incorporating them into their workflows. So from the foundation's perspective, events that bring the two together are a way to go about increasing the understanding of capabilities, and then, like I said, helping them make those connections so that the data scientists and real technologists in one organization can reach out and learn from their colleagues in industry.
Elliot?
Yeah, so one of our speakers who was with the Army's National Ground Intelligence Center, she's the manager who oversees, Emily Thompson, who oversees the OSINT effort at NGIC, and has a heavy data science component. And she talked specifically about the need for OSINT practitioners to be well-versed, and then for the AI and data science community to also be cross-trained to a certain degree, so that we have both the technologists and the OSINT practitioners. And she had a quote where she said, AI may not replace everyone's job, but it will certainly replace the jobs of those who don't use it. And so that is a key thing from the foundation perspective. We today talked about a certification, and that to be able to make OSINT practitioners good consumers of the technology, and to be able to, AI is fantastic, but garbage in, garbage out, right? And so if we're not 100% certain we have high quality data, then all the computational capability in the world is not going to make this data any better on the out.
Without the connections, I found years ago that technologists would put a tool on an analyst's desk and they'd say, "This is great," and the analyst would never use it because it wasn't what they needed. And so I think that opportunities like this will help increase that cross-pollination and teach both sides what the other one needs.
Barb, Elliot, it's great to have both of you here. Thank you very much for joining me today. Mike Schrader of Carasoft, welcome. It's great to see you again. How are agencies integrating OSINT into their overall data offerings and then converting that into actionable information for their decision makers to use?
We're seeing a dramatically increasing appetite for the use of publicly available and commercially available data, increasing at an incredibly rapid pace, partially because the ease at which, or the scale at which data can be collected today, what used to take months or weeks or months or years of manual collection efforts, has been automated through AI, and data is able to be collected and vetted in fairly near real-time standards relative to previous eras. The specialization of the data that's being collected is able to be applied across a variety of government specific use cases, including cyber risk, supply chain risk, human intelligence. Lots of different areas of the government mission is able to accept and own, take on commercially available data sets or publicly available data sets, blend it with their own data, and use it for actionable insights. I think that last piece is key in that a lot of the analytics tools and AI tools that drive analytics have improved dramatically to where all of these disparate and scaled out data sets are able to glean some insights much more rapidly than prior.
Sounds like there are a lot of technology pieces that are driving that integration of OSINT into the overall data offerings that an organization can make. Are there other pieces that are important too?
Yes, absolutely. There's a big technology dependent ecosystem that drive this demand for OSINT product sets. I think that there's not just the the analytics tools, the data itself, there's the data cleansing and data cataloging tools, but even the underlying foundational pieces that drive from an infrastructure and compute perspective, all play a role in that technology ecosystem that drive the demand.
What are the potential issues, challenges that organizations need to keep in mind here?
We see, sort of the good with the bad. The good is this industry seems like there's a big demand, big appetite. It's an accepted practice to use blend commercially and publicly available data. But with all of that interest and all that demand, there's a lot of noise in the market. There's a lot of players that are saying that are providing data products and data assets or data tools or analytics tools. So with that noise, I would say no two company and no two data product is created equal. There's a lot of ambiguity and variability around which are the right tools and data products for the right problem sets. And so I would say from an industry perspective, the best thing industry could do to help resolve some of that noise is market education. I think the customers, practitioners, the mission owners would benefit from getting educated on the products and tool sets that are available and aligning with the right ones that are really right for the right use case. So a lot of the vendors in the market, a lot of the data owners or data asset providers saying they do everything, and I would say that's probably a fallacy. So making sure that alignment takes place through market education and that the right products get chosen for the right problem set.
Long time ago, a data practitioner in government told me, Mike, that there are 3 C's and an S that he observed to think about data in government. And I wonder if they still apply in the OSINT community today. Collection, collation, and curation are the 3 C's, and storage is the S. Are those the things that OSINT practitioners are thinking about primarily? Is that the right kind of
I think that trajectory still holds today. I think there's a fair amount of tradecraft that goes in on the analytics side. So if there was one category or element that we've seen added to that mix, it's probably the tradecraft of how to pull the data and run the right analytics to glean the right results and insights, and have those insights really feed that OODA loop, so to speak, of decision making overall.
It's great to have you here, Mike. Thanks for joining me. Greg Zelmer's director of the OSINT Office for the Army. Greg, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. How is your organization, other organizations across the Defense Department, using OSINT and combining it with other types of intelligence to turn it into actionable information?
So with the explosion in publicly available information, it's just an information source that can't be ignored. The the professionalization that the Army's spent on training its OSINT workforce, especially in terms of tradecraft and training, has really helped to ensure that the outputs of that information are valuable to commanders. Oftentimes, publicly available information that turns into OSINT is information that's the most readily available to commanders and decision makers for situational understanding and also to make informed decisions. So what the Army does is, and the most important thing that commanders can do for uh, their analysts and collectors is to know what the commander needs to know and when. And then if they know that, that helps them sort out all the ton of information that's out there, focus in, and be able to get that information to them to make good informed decisions.
How have you seen automation impact this space as the proliferation of data? It's been exponential, is what I keep hearing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And automation and artificial intelligence are absolutely critical to it. There is so much information available that analysts and collectors can drown in it. So the artificial intelligence tools that are available help to sort that information out and allow analysts and collectors to focus in on what's most important. And then that allows them time to actually think about the problem instead of spending all their time searching for data.
Are those tools giving the practitioners an opportunity to kind of get ahead of that curve or just keep up with the curve? Or what does that dynamic
So
look like?
the tools get better every day. So it certainly keeps them ahead of the curve. And, industry is very prolific in generating and providing new capabilities all the time. So I think that the struggles always be to how to get out of the massive information and find those special pieces of information you really need. And you absolutely need the AI and automation in order to do that.
Are the concepts of speed and accuracy at odds with each other, or is it possible to get them to work in tandem with each other?
So this is an age-old problem. It has nothing to do, or it has a lot to do with public information, but it's not exclusive to it. The speed versus accuracy has to be in the forefront of every intelligence professional's mind at all times. If you sacrifice accuracy for speed, then you're not best informing your decision makers so they make the most optimal decision. If you sacrifice relevance for speed, then you're giving too much information to the decision maker. You're not helping them out at all. So it's that balance, I think, that every professional has to do, and it goes back to anything that helps the analysts or collectors sort out the most important pieces of information in order to spend more time thinking about the problem. That's helpful, and both automation and artificial intelligence help us do that.
Are there best practices for achieving that balance, or is that an art rather than a science?
So there is art to it, and experience is very important. That's why we try to develop and train and mature and professionalize the Army OSINT collectors. Training and tradecraft, standardized tactics, techniques, and procedures, that all helps. But at the end of the day, there is some art and just experience that is critical to the output.
Has the transition from, I'd say 15, 20 years ago, when the intelligence community kind of looked down on OSINT, to where it is today, as you said at the beginning, and a really important critical piece of the puzzle, has that required a culture shift? What has that been like inside the community, in your view?
So there's a bit of a culture shift. Some of the more the older intelligence disciplines, again, human, et cetera, I think that they probably looked at the skeptical eye, but it's the proliferation of the data. There's just so much information out there that you can't ignore it. A lot of times it's readily available and can answer your intelligence requirements on the spot.
What's the trajectory look like moving forward? We're in a spot, it sounds like, where volume and speed as well as accuracy are all equally important, that balance that you talked about a moment ago. How do you see this moving forward?
I think it's only going to get more crazy. the the availability of the information is only going to increase. The scale and volume is only going to increase, and I think that both the government and industry will continue to leverage uh, artificial intelligence and other tools that will help keep us ahead of the curve so that we're able to use that information for good purposes.
Greg, it's terrific to have you here. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Sean Underwood of Shadow Dragon, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you being here. What's the trend line that you see in the OSINT community over the next year to maybe even 5 years out? I know it's hard to predict, but what do you see as the things that continue to be important to people or maybe aren't on their radar screens now but should be?
Yeah, thanks for having me today. And I think there's a lot of nuances to that question based off of the different diverse mission sets of how OSINT is being applied to government, whether that be, in law enforcement, the military, the intelligence. But even within the federal civilian government, there's a lot of ways that OSINT is now being used. Also, the trends that aren't going to be, completely even because within OSINT, there's sort of two practice areas. There's publicly available information and there's commercially available information. Some of the trends that we've seen today, is very sort of artificial intelligence and machine learning, heavy, where, we're seeing a lot of good outcomes in terms of the different applications of artificial intelligence and its use. But some of the longer term trends that we're seeing is really, how do we actually make open source intelligence a more defined sort of practice area within the government? And a lot of that comes down to training enablement within that structure. You have a lot of areas where OSINT is being applied where it hasn't traditionally been used before. Going back 2-3 years, OSINT was a very manual process. And so as a lot of new vendors are coming out, it's sort of exposing the value of OSINT a lot more within government. And so some of the trends I think we're going to see there is more about how we actually go about training and implementation versus some of just the technology advancements within the tools themselves.
You made a reference to a nuance there that I wanted to pick up on: publicly available information versus commercially available information. Are those two areas diverging? And if so, do you continue to expect them to diverge, or are they consolidating, coming closer together?
Yeah, so within a mission space, they're both used, quite heavily. So the ODNI sort of broke out the definitions of open source intelligence in terms of, what's publicly available information that, you can Google search and get. Commercial available data being more like business records, things that typically are behind a paywall or is collected, and then kind of sold out commercially. And so that's how we kind of break down the two different areas.
Are those, is one more so than the other becoming more prominent or more popular in the OSINT community, or is that more art than science, do you think?
There is a little bit art and science to it as both. A lot of it also comes down to, mission sets and authorities. Within law enforcement operations, a lot of times you aren't allowed to use commercially available information because of privacy concerns. So they may only be able to use publicly available information.
What are the other trends that you see developing regarding things like automation and the tools that organizations use to make decisions with the data that they have, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, kind of looking, 2, 3, 4 years out, based off a lot of discussions that's happening, at the senior command level, is, how do we actually bring this to the masses? And part of that is, how do we actually kind of put like almost kind of like a Google search type information in place for, open source intelligence? Because to be able to practice it now within different tool sets, um, going back to what I was saying earlier, the implementation time can be a little complex where, to stand up a tool and environment, it can be, 4 to 6 months versus 2 to 4 weeks. And so the easier the tools are and being able to simplify the searching, getting results out and applying it to new threat areas as well. I think, kind of looking at the speed is one thing that's going to be looked at going in the future.
Is there a risk of oversimplification of the tools regarding the output that you get from what you ask the tools to do?
I think that depends on the mission and the tool. Um, and also what they're actually, searching. A good example being, if I search a name, there's likely many people that have that name. And so the results that you're going to get back can be, pretty complex. If I'm starting at something like an email address or a telephone number, it has a stronger one-to-one correlation where not a lot of people have ever had that telephone number. So the results that you get back are typically higher confidence related.
Swede Barine of Flashpoint's great to see you. Thanks for joining me. What are some of the key challenges that you're seeing agencies having to deal with as they're integrating open source intelligence into the other types of information that they're receiving?
So I think one of the predominant challenges is misunderstanding about what OSINT is and is not. And historically, it used to be publicly available information. It has always included commercially available information, but only recently did the government start setting policies on what that means. And I would add that there's kind of another layer of that conversation, which is not all commercially available information is equal. And so there's a lot of education that needs to happen at all levels of government. It's the agency customers themselves, it's the contracting offices. There is a brand new House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence subcommittee on this discipline. And so some commercially available information comes scraped and aggregated, kind of almost like a mindless collect off the internet. Other is really precisely collected, and I think really an important distinction is how do agencies in the federal government, which have to adhere to privacy standards, constitutional restrictions, legal authorities stay within those bounds, how can they get the auditability and traceability for a commercial provider to show how they got the data? And can they separate out data in order to protect individual civil liberties of individual Americans?
Who should provide that education that you just described, and who needs to receive it?
So I think those of us in the commercial sector need to do a lot of this education. And I think I would recommend those in government to take briefings. And anytime they're talking to a commercially available information provider or someone that holds themselves out as an OSINT provider, would be ask that question, show us how. And they should actually sit and see that, whether it's a platform, whether it's a mechanism, but they should ask for that briefing and that actual product demonstration. And also, companies need to be able to show their math, right? We live in an increasingly transparent era. And so OSINT's a little bit funny because you need to be secret about how you collect this. You need to protect the identity of who's asking questions, but you need to be open when asked, right, to provide, again, that validity, verification, validation, proof of evidentiary standard. What if the FBI is your customer and they need to use it in a future federal law enforcement case? So you got to be able to show it meets a federal evidentiary standard in court.
You have to show a little bit of the how, but not so much of the how that you give away the company store, it sounds like.
100%. I view it as akin to when commercially available satellite imagery came to market, right? It used to be super secret stuff. Hey, there's a satellite constellation. It can take pictures. The government can task it. When I was a Marine lieutenant, that was like some of the most secret stuff we had during the invasion of Iraq. Today, I could do that through Maxar or through another commercial satellite imagery company. And like for us at Flashpoint, that's our future. Just this year, we're making that available to commercial customers, tasking our collection, saying the target. So we could get it from a customer to which target they want, and then we use our technology and tradecraft to get the picture, if that makes sense. So, I mean, I think that's an apt analogy was commercialization of space imagery, commercialization of open source intelligence.
Yeah. About 30 seconds left. What's the future of that look like in your view?
Yeah, I think a mix of technology and tradecraft. We hear a whole lot about AI. We hear a whole lot about people having really interesting managed attribution solutions. Technology is great, but the human component is part of intelligence. It's intelligence collections, planning, exploitation, analysis, and then the briefing component. So the full intelligence cycle needs to include humans on the loop and in the loop. So I think the future is that we see customers increasingly empowered to do their own collect tasking, inbound, and analysis dissemination. And we need to be enabling an industry as opposed to thinking that we're a self-licking ice cream cone.
Sweet. It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me. Eric Eric Huffman of Volncheck. Welcome. It's great to see you. What are some of the things that organizations incorporating OSINT into their workflows are running into, both challenges and benefits that they're seeing as far as doing that?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's the OSINT community does a great job of providing lots and lots of data. The challenge for defenders or government mission partners is that just having more data is not really what anybody wants. They need to have reliable data. OSINT data OSINT data is many different sources with various reliability. So they need to know that the data is being provided to them is reliable and it's consistent. So what industry can do is be that layer in between the vast amounts of data and government mission partners to provide a reliable format, reliable context, and then help them do their job faster.
When you say consistent data, what are you referring to there?
So, they need to know where to go to look for specific kinds of data. And so, at a company like Volncheck, we provide data that's all about vulnerabilities. It's kind of in the name. So they know where to go to find that kind of data. None of my customers have ever said, what I really need is a lot more data in an unstructured format to sift through. They need to have that data in a consistent format, and it has to be actionable.
Mm-hmm. Structuring the data that's not structured, is that process getting easier for the government organizations? Is it getting easier for industry, or is that just as difficult as it's always been?
I think we're not really keeping up, as an entire industry. There's always more data. And that's where I think industry needs to be at the forefront, is identifying what is the important data to structure, to provide. And then, and the other thing too is in a timely fashion. It's figuring out what to do with the data, especially for government customers. It has to be timely to the mission.
I guess speed is the next question. Are organizations getting better at ingesting and delivering data in a timely manner to the people that need it to make decisions?
Yeah, I think so. Some are, big organizations are not, but it creates a space for companies like mine to provide that near real time intelligence, which is what mission partners need. The larger tech companies, larger organizations in general move slower, but that does allow for a space in the industry for those who are focusing on that timeliness of data.
Mm-hmm. The speed is something that every single person that I talk to, in not just in the OSINT space, but all across the national defense community, talks about. What are the things that organizations in government can do to try to stay ahead of that trajectory? Or is the volume just too much that that's not even a realistic possibility?
Well, it's there's the classic example of the OODA loop, which a lot of people in security use. It was originally like a fighter pilot term, right? And so it's constant, right? It's cyber warfare. So you have to continue to try and stay inside of the enemy's OODA loop, and it's never ending, right? It's not one thing that they can do. They need to constantly have the most reliable, up to date, actionable data, training, and appropriate disposition of the cyber force. All those things need to be working together.
How does one know that one is achieving the things that we're talking about, that you are receiving data in a timely enough way, and that you're disseminating it in a timely enough way to do all the things that people want to do?
Well, catastrophic consequences not happening is the one way. But, kind of from a tactical standpoint, the provenance of the data. So one of the things that data providers need to give a backup, right? So the black box scoring methods, which was kind of a method of security in days past, that's no longer really viable. You have to, back up your sources and give context and say why the data that you're providing is actionable in this manner. And without that, it's really hard, especially for governments, to take action based on that data. And so it's on industry to provide that context.
Eric, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Kristen Hyduke of Cirrus, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining me today. How are you seeing organizations balancing speed and volume in OSINT with accuracy and the issues that go along with that?
So I think the data landscape today is larger and expanding every day, right? And so the challenge really is how do you access that information in enough time to act? And that's why a lot of agencies really focus on the urgency of the data they receive. But fast data without clarity is very dangerous, right? Because it could lead you to make decisions that you wouldn't otherwise make, or decisions that would disadvantage the organizations that we work with. So we really focus on speed with clarity, and we encourage the agencies that we work with to demand that from their vendors as well. Cirrus looks at it in a couple different ways. One, we prioritize creating a symbiotic relationship between the AI, the applied AI models that we have on the platform, with the work that our human analysts do. And what that means is our analysts are able to produce better, faster, quicker intelligence finished products on the platform by the benefit of the models that we have. And those analysts are actually providing feedback on the performance of those models so that we are always able to improve what they're doing and make sure that that improvement is benefiting the customers as well. The other way we approach that is we are creating forecasting models that are allowed to look at the various factors, both short and long term, whether that be economic, political, weather, governance, and we're able to understand when stability within a given area is increasing or decreasing. That actually helps our customers to get left of boom, right? And so they're able to make decisions in a calm space where they can think proactively rather than just be reactionary. So we really try to encourage our customers to demand that because the industry is capable of producing it today, and that's what Cirrus tries to do.
Of all of those things that you just described, what are the ones with the biggest obstacles for the agencies to try to overcome in getting the results that they want?
I think one of the obstacles is interoperability. So they want to be able to optimize for the publicly available data and share that alongside the government-owned data or the classified data that they have. So in order to do that, there are several options. The typical one today is I'm going to take all of this unclassified data and I'm going to port it up to my high side. Challenge with that is that takes time. So it removes that real-time component of the data itself. So there are pluses and minuses to that for sure. So some of our savvier customers actually use our data both in its low side representation today, and they port it up and add it to their government data. So they're able to benefit from the real-time capability of the platform on the unclass side, but they're able to use those long-term stability models that we have on the platform with their government-owned data on the high side.
Nobody seems to think that the volume will decrease anytime soon. Nobody seems to think that the desirability for speed will change anytime soon. So what maintains the momentum? It sounds like you think that the government and industry sides are both accelerating their ability to deliver. What keeps that going, though, in light of the fact that the factors that I just outlined?
So what that means is the priority becomes how to separate the noise from the most important information that our customers need to make decisions. So in the early days of OSINT, if you will, the metric of OSINT was the post. It was the social media post. It was the article. Today, what Cirrus tries to do is we have tried to make the metric the event. Right? And so I need to know what's happening on the ground so I can make decisions. I don't need a single post, right? Because a single post in and of itself is not going to give me the context I need to make decisions that impact my organization in a positive way. So by moving our customers to this new thinking of looking at the event as the unit of OSINT, you then help them get farther along in their intelligence process, which means you're decreasing the time at which you see a piece of information or a piece of OSINT on our platform to the point at which they can make a decision.
Kristen, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me. Mariah Carews of Wirescreen, thank you very much for joining me. It's great to have you here. You talked before we turned the cameras on about the change that has happened in the OSINT community from not very highly regarded, quite honestly, to now a very important part of the intelligence community and the way that they seek information. What's driven that change, and what do you expect to see to continue to drive that momentum?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Over the last decade, there has been an accelerated shift from the more traditional intelligence gathering methods, which often relies on confidential and classified sources, but can be timely to collect, very costly, very limited in scope. So now you have this vast array of, open public sources to pull data from, and that's kind of a game changer. Um, you can think of OSINT, first what would come to mind is typically social media, um, business filings, news reports, but there's even more powerful data now when you think about all the devices in this IoT landscape that we have. Everything is connected, right? Wearables, sensors, scanners. So you're just seeing this massive collection of this open source data that's really powerful. Sometimes even it's real-time data, and these agencies are being able to look at that first and foremost. And often there's not as much of a cost burden to pull and take in, even at these high volumes of data.
Mhm. Has collation, or excuse me, has collection kind of gotten ahead of collation and curation with the ability to scrape from all of those sources? But the challenges that I keep hearing about how do I analyze it all? How do I make sure that I'm seeing only what I need, signal versus noise, all those kinds of things?
No, that's spot on. So I would say, yes, it's openly available, it's transparent, accessible, which are great. That helps with parallel reconstruction. It helps with aspects of being able to have higher confidence in the end intelligence product. But the technical challenges of doing that, of storing that data, and running these analytics on it, it's not easy. That's something that Wirescreen and other OSINT solutions providers can help with. So one thing that we do is we collect, we standardize, and we structure it in a way that's curated to reduce the noise and really show what the meaningful insights that the data has to offer can be there right up front. We also match up some risk and threat indicators, kind of fuse it all together so that you're getting a bigger picture of what you need to pay attention to, what you need to dive into, and this really helps intelligence analysts, get to insights faster and be able to kind of expand their network graphing capabilities in terms of making those really hidden connections or hard, to find relationships that matter to mission success.
You mentioned storage a moment ago, and it strikes me, we talk a lot about the other steps in the process, but it's probably been 5 or so years ago that I talked to a provider, a professional inside intelligence organization in the government who said, my problem is to know where to put the stuff as much as what to put away. And I wonder if you've seen that trajectory change over time as far as this might be important, but I might not ever need it, but I really don't want to get rid of it. That kind of a discussion around where data should go.
I think that's absolutely right. We often will get the statement, we don't care if there's a little bit of noise, just give us everything, because they want to make sure that they're not missing anything, and they want to ensure that they're having as much reach as they can and as much visibility as they can for the data sets that are going to get them their insights that they need. So I would say one of the other ways that we can help with that is we provide, a platform that gives really powerful product capabilities of making it easy for non-Mandarin speakers to use, non-China experts, and they're able to take our graphing tool, take other data sets, use that there, and not have to worry so much about what all the data that they're collecting. They can just pull it from our platform.
Mariah, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
Clay Hicks of Signal Labs, thanks for joining me today. It's great to have you here. How are you seeing automation, artificial intelligence merging with what organizations are trying to do in the OSINT community, Clay?
So with the volume of data and the speed of data, as well as the complexity of data, the various sources around the world, AI has become a necessity to process that. With an army of analysts, any particular agency would work for years and years and years to analyze even the data that's produced in 1 week. And so where AI assists various different agencies, federal agencies, DoD, intelligence community, is it gives the ability for these various analysts to process that data, analyze it in various ways based on their mission set, based on their requirements, and then provide not only the analysis in the form of reports, but also alerting for various crisis responses that they may be required to perform over any and all AORs around the world. Mm-hmm. And so that speed and that volume of data acts as both an advantage as well as a danger. And so from that speed and volume, there are accuracy questions, there are validation questions. But if you think about it, we've had those same problem sets across all the various ints, whether you're talking about HUMINT, SIGINT, GEOINT, for as long as each of them has existed. But we've developed validation methods within each of those disciplines to support the intelligence cycle, such that each of them both feeds and validates another one. OSINT's no different. Yes, the volume is greater. Yes, the speed can be greater. But utilizing all of the different forms of intelligence together, layered together, to produce a holistic picture is what the future looks like. AI is critical for that, given the volume and speed.
You listed 3 attributes, 3 reasons that AI and automation are important: speed, volume, and complexity. A lot of folks at this conference have talked about speed and volume. Complexity has not gotten as much attention. What makes a data set or certain types of data complex enough that the user receives benefit from using an automation tool or using artificial intelligence?
Sure. So with each of the millions of sources that are out there in the publicly available information world, each of them is formulated differently. Each platform formulates their information differently. It reports it differently. It contains different pieces of information and can be utilized in different ways. One of the piece that increases the complexity is how do you then process all of this data with its different schema, its different content, in a way that the same one analyst can see much of this data in maybe not a single screen, but a handful of screens or a handful of visualizations, so that they can begin to wrap their mind around not only what the problem set is, what the key components of that problem set are, but then what should be done about it, so that when the analytical reports come out, decision makers can actually utilize the information that's come in and the analysis that's been done to make effective decisions for not only geopolitical, tactical, large-scale strategic, all the way down to very, very specific neighborhood by neighborhood questions and decisions that they must ask of the data.
Mm-hmm. About 30 seconds left. What's the trend line look like in your view? What's the trajectory of all of these issues as far as how they will impact the OSINT community?
With respect to AI, now you're talking about agentic AI, things of that nature, that's only going to grow. The speed of innovation will always outpace government capabilities to bring those capabilities in, but government agencies have to focus on what is most important to them, what types of data, and what specific mission sets they want to address. Each mission set has a different tolerance for what type of data you have and the accuracy of the data. Some particular mission sets may be able to tolerate a higher percentage of false positives, for example. Others, where lives are on the line, false positives are not going to be useful. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, the ability to take, again, back to volume of data and speed of data, you have to align that with your specific mission set, because data is not data. AI is not AI. Things are very specific. A particular example of that is, for the longest time, most of your open source information was text or narrative based. Now, with the change in conversation styles around the world, a growing percentage of your conversation and reporting and information is based in images or videos only, with no post-text involved. So if you find yourself conducting open source information on narrative sources only, you're missing a huge percentage. And that specifically requires AI to function within computer vision, optical character recognition, and various object detection capabilities.
Clay, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Clay Hicks of Signal Labs, thanks for joining me for this Innovation in Government program presented by Carahsoft from the OSINT Tech Expo. If you missed any part of this program, you can watch the show in its entirety on our website at fedgovtoday.com or on the FedGov Today YouTube channel. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks for watching. Good night.